All right, here we are, day one on the job site. This is where we're going to be going through. I'm going to take the mini skid right through here. We just moved this fountain. This was the only thing in the way of me getting through here. So we moved that. It was right here. We're going to drive right through here. This is going to be all concrete. That wall in the back, block wall, we're going to knock that out. On the other side, you can see the top of the metal shed. That's going to be destroyed. And then there's a patio along the whole back of the house that we'll get to. Once we get this wall down, we'll go around the back and take a look at that. But right now, you can see they've had a water problem here. You can see the trench that's been cut in here, and the hole that got knocked through the bottom of that wall, just to get the water to come out of the backyard. So my objective is going to be getting the concrete in here, sloping towards the front. That's the goal, without drains. We'll see how that goes. Once I break out the laser level, we'll know if it can be done or not. Could be a chance of putting drains in here, a possibility of drains, but we won't know until we start hitting it with the laser level. All right, let's get to work. All right, so we're taking that block wall out right now with the sledgehammer. That's a 20-pound sledgehammer. You can see the hole at the bottom of that block and how they cut a channel. That was to get the water out of the backyard. Must have been flooding back there. That metal shed, that's also going to get removed. And to save space in my dump trailer, I'm going to disassemble that whole shed screw by screw, which won't take long with the screw gun. There's not much of a footing underneath this wall, we discovered. Probably only about a 4-inch deep footing in there. And it was hollow, completely hollow as well. So that came out really easy without damaging the property line wall or the house. All those sections of that shed I'm going to lean up sideways in my dump trailer, and then I'll have higher sides basically to get more stuff in there. Those sprinkler valves you see against the house, those have been abandoned for years, so those are going to just get removed. We are going to do some future setup for sprinklers. We're going to bring a water supply line out from the house to the end of the new patio slab. Also, we'll run a conduit for the wire for the control. All right, we made it into the backyard. Shed's down, block walls open, and here we are. So now what I have to do before we get too into this, before I bring in the mini skid to start excavating all this dirt and grass, you can tell it's a big hump all the way down this side yard. That's why they've trenched it. So I'm going to break out the laser. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to have to start with getting the top of that existing patio slab. That's where I got to start. That's my benchmark. That's everything. That's the low point most likely of that whole backyard. So that corner of that patio. So I got to shoot it there. I'm going to transfer that over to this wall, since this is going to all be concrete now. Transfer that grade to here. I may start level, just get level marks all the way around, and then just start measuring down. If I have the space, if the dirt's already low enough, then I'll go ahead and include my slope and mark it. But I'll most likely end up marking level because it looks like everything's high. That way I don't have to dig down as much to get something to go by. So we'll mark level, go around, measure down everywhere, and see if we got slope. If not, we have to put a drain probably right there and take it all the way out, back the sidewalk probably. Anyway, let's get back to business. All right. It turned out that we didn't really need a drain. What we had was about 2.5 inches of slope from that patio all the way to the front of house at the gate where we were stopping. It's not much slope, but it'll prevent it from going in the house before it runs out. Here's the Johnson laser level. So now that is set on the edge of that patio, we'll transfer that mark over to the other end of the patio. And what I'll do after that is I'll go down to the gate. You notice where I put the laser level? That can actually see down the side yard and the patio without having to move it. So where you put your laser level or trans or whatever you might be using it, you have to take that in consideration, that you don't have to move it, because that's just another extra step you'll have to do. So that mark right there that I just put is level with that patio. And that's a couple inches below the lawn right there. So that's the minimal I can go. I can make it level across there, slope it away from the house a little, and then eventually it would run out this direction along the block wall. From the block wall, I'll have it slope all the way out this way. There's your level mark there. And we want to be at the bottom of that gate. Then we don't have to adjust it. So in between that level mark and the bottom of gate, it's about 2.5, 3 inches. So that's how much slope we have. Now I'll drop it down a little bit below the bottom of gate just so we clear on swinging it without hitting the concrete. Here's your level mark on the other side. We want to be underneath that wood. So we're looking at a good 2.5 inches once we measure down. So that gives us, now from here, from this point here, you notice I'm moving the laser level. I'm moving the laser level down. That means we have 1 inch slope. I moved it down 1 inch. So I have 1 inch from the house to the lawn. So we'll go level on the outside form all the way to the block wall. Then from the block wall, straight slope to the gate. So we'll have a full 2.5 on the shortest distance we can go. And since I know we have 2.5, I can actually go down a little bit here. I can drop it down 1 inch here, so we have a little bit of slope from the existing patio at the high side heading towards this side yard. What we're doing here to try to get this dirt out as quick as possible, we're taking one scoop into a wheelbarrow and then a scoop in the bucket, and we're both taking loads out. Once I get pretty close to the grade that I think I need to be at, I'll go ahead and run a string line, snap a line on the house, the wall, and then I'll really start fine-tuning it. Now that particular conduit that we just moved, that was along the side of the house running to where the valves used to be. Now I've just rotated that whole line, and it still has the wires in there for the control sprinkler valves. The wire's still in that conduit. I just swung it around because nothing was glued, so it's still rotated. And the wire's still there. Now it's on the outside of slab. Now all I have to do is run a supply line for water from underneath the hose bib to the outside of patio for future stuff. future valves or water, whatever. There's also a lot of water damage on the side of the house, all the way around from on the back side of the house and also on the side yard. And that's because there was no drainage in this yard. The water just pooled back here. So the soil stayed wet, and then it seeped up the stucco, bubbled the paint. It weakened the entire structure of the stucco system. There's my old Christmas tree. I decided, well, if I'm going to make a dirt dump or a trash dump, I'll throw that in there too. So when I did this cut of all this dirt, I cut it on the money. And if I overcut a ½ inch or an inch, I just left it as is rather than trying to get loose dirt recompacted in there nice and tight. Because it's hard to get native when it's been sitting here for 50, 60 years. So it's best if you cut it on the money and pour. Although I do run the plate compactor over this entire area just to make it look nice. So we're going to be doing some stucco patch as well. Along that entire side, we're going to scrape off all the stucco that's loose, as well as the back of the house. We'll patch it all up, put a new texture coat on there, and get it ready for paint. We'll come in and do the concrete after we do the stucco repair. Then the painters can come in and do their thing. Right now we're just getting some marks on the wall, snapping some lines. Here we are on day 2, setting some forms. We're going to set some 2x4s, and then we're going to compact and put rebar in. We're going to dowel some rebar into the existing patio. Once we get it compacted and the forms set, I'll go ahead and start prepping the stucco patch. I'm going to use some La Habra stucco, and I'm going to also use some glue. I'm going to put glue on the wall, and I'm also going to add glue to the mix. We're going to show that in more detail as we get to that point. So we have about 40 feet here from the back outside edge of patio to that gate. 40 feet. We have about 2.5, 3 inch slope. Here's your supply line going in. We just stub it up 6 inches out of the concrete. We'll put a cap on there, but we won't glue it. That way we can throw a valve on there and then bring it up to the hose bib. Throw a T there as well. So right now we're prepping that stucco by scraping out the loose stuff and wire brushing it. And once that's good and clean, I'll go through and start throwing some glue on there. Here we are, day 2, morning. So far what we accomplished yesterday was excavation and pretty much grading. Today all we've done so far is compacted and set the back form. Now what we're going to do is get all this loose stucco off the side of the house. The way I'm going to do it is by scraping and wire brushing. First I'll scrape, get the big stuff, then I'll come through with a wire brush, then just a stiff nylon brush. And now I'm going to use some glue on there and then re-stucco it, and then it'll get painted after the concrete is actually placed. Let's see how easy this comes off. whatever's left after you do that is on there pretty good. We'll just keep doing that all the way around. Let me show you the stucco we're going to use and the bonder. Where is that at? Oh, here we are. So right here we've got the wire brush going. That'll go all the way around the house. Here's the stucco coat we'll be using. Here's the bonder. I'm going to brush this on. Here it is. I'll dilute this a little bit, brush it on to the wall, and then slap the stucco on there, and then sponge float it out, and the painters come in. Okay, so we're going to get that done before the concrete, otherwise it'll make a mess on top of the concrete, so I don't have to cover it this way. Here's some more areas I scraped off. Now we got to get rebar in here today. We got to get dowels into this patio. We've reworked for future valves if they ever get them. I'm going to tie into that. That's a future 3/4 out here. And then the old valves were against the house at the other side. We just rotated the entire conduit and wire. We rotated it here. Now everything's on the outside. So we got the wire control valves, got future supply line. The valves can go anywhere from here without having to mess with the concrete. All right, talk to you later. There's the La Habra stucco mix. Get this mixed up about right, and then I'll throw some glue in there. And then I'll dilute a little bit, and then I'll go around, brush everything I'm going to patch. I'll put 2 coats of glue on the wall. I like to mix with a trenching shovel. It's a lot easier to turn the mud over. You can cut through it a lot quicker. Hose are nice, but you can't really flip it, and I like to flip it. There's some of the glue. You can see the runoff on the existing patio. That was from the first coat I'd already put on. Now this is the second coat. The main reason I'm doing the second coat is just for the moisture, getting it into the stucco. So the stucco bonds a lot better when you're throwing it on a moist base. And it doesn't hurt to have a little glue in there at the same time. Now that's my 5x12 trowel, which I use for concrete, and that size is really good for doing stucco as well, or faces of steps, walls. Now that that's on there, what I have to do is let that dry to a point where I can still work it with a sponge float and get a texture on there without it all washing away, because it's going to be a wet sponge. So it has to be dry enough to hold. There's quite a big crack along this area, and what that is the actual slab is separating from the foundation. Even though it was most likely a monolithic pour on that foundation, typically what happens, the way these are poured, and since they don't have any vertical steel from slab to footing, you got a cold joint basically the way they pour it, because typically what happens is you pour the footing all the way around to seal it up along your formwork, and then you come back, and by the time you pour the slab, that bottom footing could be already hard, so you got a cold joint there and no vertical steel tying it together, so it's really kind of a worthless setup. This is number 3 rebar on 2-foot centers. We can tie that steel in and get it completely tied before I even have to sponge float, or close to it. But it looks like I'm sponge floating already from the looks of this. But it was close. The side yard was a lot funner to Stucco, I have to admit, because I had a bigger area to work with. The overlaps in all this rebar is about 20 to 24 inches, double tied at every splice. And from the edges of the outside edges of the new concrete, we're about 3 inches in from everything. Also, I'll throw a 45-degree angle bar on the corner of that house right there where it's protruding. So this is kind of what it should look like when you're about ready to pour. The only thing missing here would be the dobies, which we'll put in there the day of the pour early. There's that stucco patch blended in beautifully. That footing of that existing wall was pretty close to the top of slab, but we got enough over it to call it good. Anyway, thank you for watching, and remember, this was just part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, because that's the pour. Thanks. Have a good one.